So Alabama did Alabama things, marched on into Nashville and sang a sad song in front of the Vanderbilt. Wait, those were the notes for the other show that I had planned. Here we go. Vanderbilt, the Commodores, Diego Pavia Power upsets Alabama 40-35 as the fans flock a stadium that's not even fully built, take down the goalpost, and as a sea of gold and black march through the streets of Nashville, they throw the goalpost into the Cumberland River. What a way to break up a scary, not sleepy Saturday slate in week 6. But now comes the reality that Alabama fans have to live with moving forward. The Crimson Tide, a program known for its pedigree, its pageantry, its passion, the dynasty that once was, lost to Vanderbilt, lost to the Commodores. The Crimson Tide now have to realize that the school known for its calculators and bow ties bested them on their home turf. And there are some people out there saying that Kalen DeBoer, after that game, that performance, not the guy, not the dude, already a failure. To which I say, what the hell are we doing? To which I truly say, why are we allowing those with the microphone to control the narrative that is far from the truth? I'm going to go on a rant right now, and you guys unfortunately have to listen. So welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below. If you are an Alabama fan, please hit subscribe, because I think that you need to have a stern talking to by yours truly. Make sure that also you download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. If you want the back and forth banner to keep on going, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson on social media. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This episode, or I guess rant, is brought to you by RHOBACK. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days at RHOBACK.com by using the promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much, much more. You want to be dressed the nine on game days? You want to take those fall foliage pictures? Do so with RHOBACK, promo code SECU. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, and Alabama fans, strap on in. You're not going to like it. Vanderbilt was the better team on Saturday. Vanderbilt, with a 2-star quarterback that was a walk-on at a junior college, with no players that probably even consider the Crimson Tide as full frontal starters, no players that probably would even see a football field on a Sunday afternoon. Was the better team. They were better coached. They were better prepared. They were more physical. They were more dominant. They were more complete. They were more cohesive. More importantly, they wanted it more in their backyard. And that was why, as players walked off the field in frustration and undeniable disbelief, you saw a team be celebrated. And this is where I have a problem with Alabama fans right now and people who believe that Kalen DeBoer is not the right guy for the job. Are we just supposed to sit here and say, oh, the other team can't try? Oh, no, the other team can't show up. No, it's Vanderbilt. Let's just let them still be the dumpster fire that once was underneath Derek Mason and coaches before James Franklin, and even at times underneath Clark Lee. Let's leave them to be the doormat dismay of the SEC. Now, that's supposed to be their assignment. They know that they're the nerds. They know that they're the losers. They know that they're not supposed to do anything but just be happy that they have the SEC logo. Let's just let them do that. No, they shouldn't even try to show up to the stadium on Saturday because we're Alabama. Welcome to the reality of the conference in 2024. Welcome to the reality of college football in 2024. Don't believe me? Well, let's just talk about how after Alabama has bested one of the best teams in college football, headlined by a coach that we believe is the heir apparent of Nick Saban, how wacky, topsy-turvy things are. Colorado is in the running to win the Big 12 in 2024. Both military academies that currently play in the American Conference will have an opportunity to not only beat up on each other in that conference title game as undefeated best of bros, but then they have to play in the Army-Navy game to potentially be the 12th seed in the college football playoff. Eli Holstein, who used to be on Alabama's roster, has led Pitt to its best record since the 1990s. On top of that, a former coach by the name of Kirk Cignetti, who worked underneath Nick Saban, has the Indiana Hoosiers at 6-0 and bowl eligible. And on top of all of that, we're talking about a team like Vanderbilt pulling off the upset. Weird things are going on in college football this year. You want to talk about a Category 5 concern when it comes to the weather, like Hurricane Milton, like Hurricane Helene, which, by the way, thoughts and prayers go out to all of those affected. We have Category 5 chaos going on in college football. Don't think for 1 second you're susceptible to it. You're not. You're far from it. You got your ass kicked, and now you want us to throw you a pity party because of you lost to Vanderbilt. That's not the case. That's not even remotely the case. And for those that believe Kalen DeBoer is in over his head, let me just make something abundantly clear. I don't buy into the narrative that there is another Alabama on the horizon. Not with Kirby Smart, not with Lane Kiffin, not with Brian Kelly, not with Ryan Day, not with Steve Sarkisian, not with even Kirk Cignetti. Coach Sig, who now has the Stogie population reaching all-time highs in Bloomington, Indiana. Literally, Menthol and Marlboro better be thanking the fact that they have a coach that is basically paying for them to have still jobs available. There's never going to be another Nick Saban. So knock it off. Anybody that tells you, oh, well, Kalen DeBoer may be the new Nick Saban doesn't know what they're talking about. Anybody who says Kirby Smart might be building the same type of dynasty out in Athens, Georgia, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't. You set these sky-high expectations for a coach that does know how to win, does know how to get the best version out of a program, and does know how to take players that probably wouldn't be considered anything for high-profile programs and lead them to championship mentality. You're comparing him to a guy that has won more national titles and will go down in history as the greatest to ever walk a sideline on a Saturday. You were destined to fail from the get-go. You were. If that's what you thought. And also, this isn't your mom and pop's Vanderbilt squad. This isn't the same thing also as Nick Saban losing to Louisiana Monroe. There can be two truths here. I'm not going to downplay what Vanderbilt did on Saturday because if they have a new aura and they got some dogs on those sidelines that are not afraid to show their bite. And Alabama in 2007 was in a worse point than Alabama in 2024. When Nick Saban lost to the Warhawks, it was with a team that barely could get off the mat. When Kalen DeBoer lost to Vanderbilt on Saturday, it was with a team that we were considering a shoo-in for the college football playoff. They're not coexisting. They don't make sense. They don't compute. It's apples to oranges. It's even worse than that. It is day-old cabbage to dog crap that you found on the sidewalk that is turning white. They're nowhere near the same in contradiction. Nothing. But it also is not the same to say that Louisiana Monroe and Vanderbilt are the same. Not even remotely close. That is not the worst loss in Kalen DeBoer's career, and it won't be. And that's not the lowest point in Alabama football history. In recency bias, sure, losing to Vanderbilt is the biggest kick in the cojones that you could ever have. But do you guys remember the world before Nick Saban arrived? Do you remember the world after Bear Bryant stepped down? Do you remember the world between 1992 Gene Stallings' roster and when Nick Saban was arriving in Tuscaloosa? Does anybody remember those moments? Because I do. I remember what was said about the Crimson Tide, and I remember what the standard was of the Crimson Tide. That is where you will figure out if Kalen DeBoer is made for this job. The standard of Alabama, because it hasn't changed from the days of Paul Bryant. It hasn't changed since Frank Thomas was walking the sidelines. It hasn't changed since Denny was still alive and the Giants were nothing more than just an idea in the heads of those folks in Tuscaloosa. It hasn't changed. The standard is the standard. How you respond to this loss will determine what version of Kalen DeBoer will be remembered in the history books. Because you have to think for 1 second, there was an Alabama squad that found a way to be able to bring them back from the brink of elimination against USF, and they turned on the Jets, and immediately they looked like the better team. You have to realize that there was an Alabama team that marched on into Camp Randall Stadium, and while folks in the Badger country were jumping around, they were jumping for joy on the Alabama sidelines when they took a 30-point lead. There has to be a moment where you realize that there's an Alabama roster that currently was able to show you what pure dominance was like in the first half against a Georgia squad that merely called uncle. That team still exists. How you respond to this loss says more about what Kalen DeBoer can do than what this loss truly was. Because winning against a program like Vanderbilt is expected. Losing shows the true colors. What does this roster look like when they take on South Carolina on Saturday? Are they still sluggish? Are they still making mental mistakes? Do they not look like the physical brand on defense that was expected in the first half against Georgia? What does this team look like when they travel to Neyland and they play against a Tennessee roster in a third Saturday in October, where for the first time in a while, an upset isn't kind of expected as a daunting result? It actually could happen, and people won't be shocked because it's Neyland, it's Rocky Top, it's one of the biggest rivalries in the sport. How do you respond then? How do you respond knowing what happened in 2022 with an offense that's just as potent and a defense that's even more ferocious than you could have imagined? How do you respond when you travel to Oklahoma to take on the Sooners in that defensive front? Or when you take on Missouri? Or when you take on LSU in the belly of the beast that is the ultimate cathedral of chaos, what I would call Vatican City of college football, Tiger Stadium, Death Valley where dreams come to die? How do you respond then? Because if in those games, when you get a marquee win, when you get a matchup that feels like is in your favor, yeah, people are cheering you on. They're saying, oh, Alabama's back. And that still could be Alabama. That still could be the Crimson Tide. And we go into December, and lo and behold, who is showing up down in Mercedes-Benz Stadium? Oh, look, it's the team that lost to Vanderbilt. And maybe Vanderbilt sit at 8-4 in Diego Pavia, Baba Yaga, who, by the way, I have been preaching his name all offseason. You folks should have realized this, is actually now being considered an SEC all-conference player. How about then? We talking about Alabama then? But no, it has to be Vanderbilt. Some of you, and I'm talking to people that work in this industry, have this little thing in front of you. It's called a microphone. Look at it. Don't need one. Because the fact that you think a loss to this Vanderbilt squad is going to define Kalen DeBoer's era is the absolute reason why we have people still believing that Kalen DeBoer is not the guy. Now, they can't move on past Saban. You have no idea what you're talking about. Nobody does. I don't know if Kalen DeBoer is the guy at this point. Neither do you. A loss to a team in Nashville that has built a new brand of football in what felt like a Hail Mary type of swing against Goliath does not show if you are good or bad at your job. It doesn't. How you respond determines what you are as a coach. How you pick players up off the mat truly determines what your persona is. How you look in the next matchup against another inferior opponent. How you play then truly will define what Kalen DeBoer and this roster could be made of. It defines what players want. It defines how players want to respond. You don't do that against a Vanderbilt team. Oh, boo-hoo, Vanderbilt. It's not the same Vanderbilt. It's not. And it's not the same Alabama. But there could be a middle ground where this loss wakes you up and realizes we can't treat ourselves like we did underneath Nick Saban. It's not the end of the world. Alabama fans, I'm one of you because if I grew up and I rooted for the Crimson Tide and I graduated from the university and I was there for the greatest timeline that ever existed in college football history. I watched the dynasty with my own two eyes. I reported on the dynasty with my own two eyes. I saw the chaos that occurred in places like Kyle Field, in Neyland, in Death Valley. I've been to those places. I see what that atmosphere is like. This is not the end of the world. This may just be the perfect push into the villain arc that turns Alabama back into the dreadful tyrant that torched teams for years on end. It's not the same as Louisiana Monroe, but at the same time, this is not the end-all be-all. So if you are an Alabama fan and need just a quick, swift kick in the nuts, let me remind you that the standard is not going away anytime soon. How you respond is better than what you look like on Saturday, and what the overall outcome for this season will not determine if Kalen DeBoer is good at his job or not. It won't. And if you want to listen to people out there that are just going to be, woe is me, Alabama is dead as disco, you probably also realize that they don't understand college football either. This is not the end-all be-alls. This is not the end of the Alabama tree as we know it. It's not. It could be in the future, but it all determines on how you respond. And it starts this weekend in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and it carries on into Rocky Top and Death Valley and Boomer Sooner Country and the Iron Bowl and throughout the 2024 season. Alabama's not going away quietly. Maybe Vanderbilt just decided to finally show up to the party. Let me know in the comment section down below. Are you actually believing that Kalen DeBoer is not the right guy for the job, despite having 100 wins and coming off a national championship-worthy season? Let me also know what your thoughts are moving forward of Alabama. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show and check out all of our great work at SECUnfiltered.com. Rants over. I'm Cole Thompson. Roll Tide. You're going to be fine. Peace.